everyone. My name is Matt Jacobson. I'm the Online Learning Coordinator for the Learning Technology Center of Illinois. Welcome back to our webinar series. It is the 1st of March, and so we're kicking off a new theme. We're calling this Makerspace March. And so today we'll kind of kick that off with a little panel. Before we get started, though, I would like to remind everyone that we are recording this webinar. Recordings will be posted on YouTube within 24 to 48 hours of the end of the event today. If you have any questions, you can use either the chat or the Q&A panel. I will be lurking about in there, and I will be happy to read your questions to our panelists as they come in. If you are using the chat, please make sure that little blue drop-down button reads everyone and not just hosts and panelists, so that we can all read your questions and benefit from the responses. For those of you attending live today, Illinois PD credit is available. We will send an email containing a link to fill out your evaluation, also within 24 to 48 hours of the end of this event. Today, we are joined by two of the LTC's instructional technology coaches, Jen Leban and Sarah Phelps. So Jen, Sarah, welcome. Can you introduce yourselves, give us a little bit of information about you, and then we'll start digging into our panel discussion.
All right. So hello, my name is Jen Leban. I am broadcasting from one of my school locations here, so I apologize if we randomly have interruptions, as we do these days. I'm a coach with the LTC. I work in the South Cook County, Illinois suburbs, and I'm right near like the Indiana border. So I work in 3 different school districts in that part of the state. I've been a teacher for 20 years. This is my first year officially under the coaching heading, although I like to think that coaching is something I've kind of been doing informally for a very long time, especially in the areas of technology.
Okay, and I'm Sarah Phelps. I am a instructional technology coach, as Matt said. I am in the other half of the state. I'm down in southwestern Illinois in the Metro East area outside of St. Louis. I work also with 3 different school districts. I have 14 years of experience in education. Prior to being an instructional technology coach, I taught computer science and STEM at the elementary level. And prior to that, I was a 4th grade classroom teacher. So I've got a lot of elementary experience. I have some STEM experience at the middle school as well. I did some after school STEM enrichment for middle schoolers, and I'm learning a whole new world with my high school district now. So I'm learning and growing as an instructional coach, hopefully as much as I'm helping other people learn and grow.
Thank you both very much for joining us today. And let's kind of get started. I'm going to play the role of the old social studies teacher because, quite frankly, that's what I am. Can you first tell me what you would use as a definition for Makerspace? What's a Makerspace after all?
So I will tell you that my concept of a makerspace is a opportunity more than an actual physical space. It's an opportunity and a mindset where students get to be in charge of demonstrating their learning in a fashion that suits their interests and learning styles, typically with physical items. Whether that is producing some kind of a replica or a diorama or a creation. The makerspace idea for my students, or how we approached it, was a place to really get hands-on with concepts that maybe weren't always tangible and weren't always accessible, but also it was a place where they got to kind of think creatively, they got to problem solve, and they got the opportunity to kind of put their thinking into the real world. So it was, again, I worked in 4 different elementary schools when we first created the idea of the Makerspace. And in all 4 of those elementary schools, they looked very different. Some had a physical space, some had a Makerspace on a cart. So it was going wherever it was needed. But a lot of times it was me helping support something that they were learning in the classroom, and giving students an opportunity to really like take that thinking outside of their brain and into the real world.
So again, if I'm playing the role of the old social studies teacher, Jen, how can I possibly use this maker thingy you're talking about in in my social studies class?
I'm resisting the urge to snarky joke like, oh, my makerspace was called Maker Thingy. Okay, so so I think about makerspaces as like a studio space. So my background is art. I was an art teacher. So I always think of a makerspace as like anytime you can do something that's hands-on. So yes, project-based learning, yes, like it's a wide variety, it's kind of this umbrella term that we use for things, but anytime you can get the kids doing some sort of like hands-on experience. So in your case, in social studies, how can we take some of these concepts that you learn in class and turn them into some kind of, hands-on experience, something interactive, something that just makes the content more engaging, or something that's novel and is going to kind of like activate that part in your memory where you remember it more because it was something different and not just, reading from a book and watching a video. So it's what I would do as a coach is I would meet with the content teacher and I would say like, well, okay, what are you studying right now? What are your main objectives? What's your curriculum? Kind of lay this out for me, what's going on. And we would look to see where there are places where different activities, hands-on activities, could naturally kind of fit in to either like enhance or reinforce projects. Before we got started, you were talking about one of your first experiences with the Sphero, which is one of the robotic equipment that I do have here at my one district, and I had it in my former district because I taught technology. I taught almost like a makerspace sort of class in my previous job. But Sphero is one of those things that we had, and you were sharing a story that you got to do jousting with the Spheros.
Yes.
And like, how great would that be for kids in a, a medieval unit or something, to incorporate that in there?
Absolutely. You've got my mind going, because I used to teach early American history, and it is so hard to 7th graders, right? And it is so hard for kids to grasp those abstract concepts of something that happened so long ago. But if they had something they could hold in their hand, like I would reach out to to museums and things like that, see if they could loan artifacts and things like that. But if we could get kids to create those, then that's a whole different level of learning, isn't it? It's not just about the subject matter then, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think, Matt, you kind of made a good point, and this was also a really big primary focus for our Makerspace. It gave students a shared experience that then could become that connection for them when they were learning. No matter where you're teaching throughout the state, you have students who are in a variety of situations. You have students who don't get to experience life outside of maybe their home and school. And so when we know as teachers, helping students connect to things is sometimes the hardest part. We're learning about something and we say, well, think about a time that you had an experience like this. And some of our students legitimately don't. They can't. Like things that we maybe take for granted, like going to a zoo, seeing animals up close, visiting a museum, knowing and being places outside of their hometown, that may not be the reality for some of our students. So if we can come to the Makerspace, we can talk about something and have an experience, build something, create something, take something apart. Then when we learn about that concept further, we know that we can tie that to prior knowledge. And we know that schema is so huge to that retaining of information. And so that was a big thing. I was with, kindergarten through 5th grade, mostly with our Makerspace. And I did the same thing that Jen did, whatever our students were learning about. And it could be in reading, it could be in math, social studies, science, whatever it was that the teachers were really kind of maybe focusing on, or maybe like feeling a struggle, like their kids just weren't really connecting to the content. They could come to the Makerspace and we could come up with a hands-on experience that hopefully would ground some of that knowledge in a way that they hadn't previously been able to, relate to it. My favorite example, we had, and we also used the Makerspace as a collaborative space. There was so much authentic collaboration in the Makerspace. Oftentimes kids weren't working independently on things. They were working with a classmate, or my favorite was I had kindergarteners and third graders working together. The third graders had been doing a project on animals, and they were learning about animals and habitats and like what's essential for a habitat. Well, the kindergarteners had been learning about letters. So together we created an alphabet zoo, and each of the kindergarten third grade partners were assigned a letter, and they had to go in and do some research and find an animal that began with that letter. And the third graders were like mentoring the kindergartners on how to create a Google slide. But the best part was they had to use stuff from the Makerspace to create a model of the animal that they were learning about. And it was just incredible. And those pictures, I look back and smile because some of those animals were unidentifiable, but they were so proud of again, they made it their goal to like pick an animal that wasn't like your like R for rabbit. No way. Like they wanted to go find some like super obscure animal, and like to listen to the kindergartner and the third grader like talk about the animals and like create together, and like using, some Play-Doh, and then they pulled out some poof balls, and like it was magical to watch that happen. And so it's such a great space for collaboration as well.
So if I had that idea going into this, that a makerspace was a place with a set curriculum and a set of lesson plans that I had to follow, that may or may not be true, correct?
I would definitely say if that was your vision for it, you're limiting the possibilities that it could be, because again, you want to connect it to what the kids know, but also, and this is a big thing I think with the maker movement outside of schools that schools can embrace, it's really supposed to be an empowerment of students for what they are interested in and what they want to know. So while we can like kind of say, okay, here's our goals and here's what we are trying to learn about through this experience, ultimately I tried to really empower the students to use the resources of the Makerspace in the way that they wanted to, right? Because it was that ownership of, okay, I want to use the 3D printer. I don't know how to do a 3D printer. Like there was learning happening related to our goals, but there was also hopefully an inspiration to just learn something that was exciting and new as far as the tools went. And, there was some productive struggle as like, I don't know what I want to do. And I think that's a big important thing too. If you go in to a makerspace expecting everybody to walk out with the exact same product, we may be missing a really big opportunity.
Cool. Okay, so it's kind of open-ended. I get that. I like that. You're starting to take my concrete sequential brain, which is where part of one side of my brain likes to live, and you're starting to help me think a little bit outside of that box a little. Tell me some more ideas that you might have, and this is for both of our panelists. What are some more ideas about some projects? What are your favorite projects that you have worked on with students? Maybe, and that can be either in your current role, your previous role. Maybe it's not with the students and teachers that you're used to working with. Jen, Sarah, who wants to start us off?
I can jump in. So one of the things I wanted to say first is that Makerspace can be a space, a physical space, but it's also kind of a state of mind, that like the whole maker movement and like the maker kind of philosophy is, I think, almost more important than having a space, because some schools do just have, carts of supplies or things. And it doesn't need to be high tech. So like we said, Sphero robots, and like, that's great if you can afford that and you can afford a 3D printer and those sorts of things. But it could also be Play-Doh and aluminum foil and popsicle sticks. And it's just the idea of this like kind of experimental, I don't know, it can be an experimental space, but also a philosophy. And that's hard for some teachers because there's a certain amount of like letting go. Or what did you say before? You said the struggle, what was
Productive struggle.
Productive struggle. Yeah. Some teachers struggle with they productively struggle with the idea of productive struggle, because we're so used to having to be experts on the things that we do. So that can be like one of the challenges with the whole makerspace idea. But sorry, because I got way off track there. Some of the things, like favorite things to do, they don't need to be super high tech. It's great if you have access to those things, but they don't need to be. So one of the things that here's kind of like an in-between. We have Cricut cutting machines. So most, I'm gonna go stereotype, like suburban moms, are familiar with the Cricut machine, or like I have a silhouette machine at home, but it's your craft cutter machine. So, but what's cool about it is that we're taking them and we're using them here at the school to do some different projects and things. I'm going to share this idea. I think is kind of cool. The 7th grade did a novel study for a book that had some kind of heavy themes in it, and like suicide awareness and things like that. And one of the ideas we came up with is to have the students each create their own like zipper pouch, and we'd use the Cricut to decorate the zipper pouch. It could be an image or like a phrase or something, but kind of unique to each student. And the idea would be to create these calm kits that like they could put stuff in them that helps that. So, maybe like mint candy or something that smells good, or a little fidget thing, or a little pop-it, or stickers, or photos of, your family and things like that. But like the idea would be that each student gets to kind of customize it for themselves. And it talks about like those SEL themes as relating to the book, and like ways that if you're feeling, maybe mentally not 100%, kind of like giving strategies. So it's neat because it ties into like the themes of the book and the things that they're reading, but it also gives them kind of this functional product too. So it's like that hands-on component to these kind of abstract themes and stuff, and it ties it to their real life. So the relevance, when I heard you talking before too, something like medieval themes and jousting and stuff, but to be like, oh, battle bots, I know that, and that sort of like, and it helps make it more real life. So yeah.
And I guess to go perfectly right with what Jen said, that the Makerspace, while we tied it into curriculum and stuff too, we tied it into issues that we were experiencing at school, or things that we cared about at school. So we had actually a team of kids. We had a lot of like student council students who would help out in a variety of ways. And one of the groups of kids would come to the Makerspace, and one of their jobs was to help kind of keep everything under control. So, organization and cleaning. But we actually started to have the motto of making our school a better place. And we did some of the things that Jen kind of talked about in her bags. So we went and like talked to teachers about things that they needed. And one of the special ed teachers suggested some kinds of fidgets and things. And so my students made calm jars that they could provide. They talked to other teachers about other resources that they needed. And my favorite thing, and it ended up becoming such a powerful movement. We had a classroom of students who were wheelchair bound. And so one of the moms reached out to the teacher and said, like, basically, that she had seen our Makerspace and thought that was super cool, and wondered if that was possible, if we could help design some kind of Halloween costume accessory that would allow for their kiddo to have this amazing Makerspace related costume. So we had 2 little boys. One was really into PJ Masks, and he was Catboy. And then the other was really into fire engines and firemen. So he was a fireman. And my students created, out of just all of the random stuff in our Makerspace, they created cardboard box vehicles that went over the wheelchairs, and like they added lights, we used our Cricut and made decals, and The news actually came. It was so powerful to watch students, and my kiddos were the ones who had designed it, came up with it, created all of the pieces from the things that they had available. We didn't pay, we didn't buy anything. And it was amazing to watch them really, again, that passion of, okay, we know we have things that we could do for somebody else. So that was just an incredible moment to watch them give back to their school community and empower kiddos who sometimes don't feel like they fit in. And it was just amazing. And that was because they had access to junk, garbage. I mean, we joke all the time. I was a pack rat. And Jen, I'm sure you can relate. People would be like, I have 45 of this box. And I'm like, I'll take them all. And they're like, what? And I'm like, what are you going to use them for? I'm like, I don't know, but I need it.
I think you've just described every teacher on the planet. There
Exactly.
aren't enough drawers and file cabinets for and boxes for all the things we want to save because someday we might use them. I used to do a kind of back around to that curricular focus. I used to do it was called junk drawer archaeology. Actually, it was anthropology, but don't tell the kids that. Where they were just given bags of random garbage that I, cleaned out of my junk drawer, and they had to figure out, okay, you're a historian. It was about thinking historically. You're a historian. Here are artifacts you found from 500 years ago. Pick a number, doesn't matter. What do you think that ancient civilization may have used this for? And sometimes there were pictures out of a magazine, and they'd have to draw the rest of the complete the picture for what you think that culture would have. Maybe it was a car, and they had some guy crazy, half a car, and they would draw this crazy other half. Wouldn't it have been cool to have been able to sort of break out of that? A lot of kids think that they can't draw, or they're not artists. So why not sidestep that with some of the gadgets that are out there, the tools, the technology that's out there, whether it's something as simple as a Chromebook or some inexpensive or even some higher end materials that you can use within a makerspace to help them break out of that. So Jen, I'll throw this over to you real quick.
Yeah.
What sort of things, if we were wanting to, if we were a school wanting to start a makerspace, what sort of things beyond the artsy, craftsy, popsicle sticks and googly eyes, right? Which there can never be too many googly eyes.
I know. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter what you're making, it will have googly eyes. And if that's an engagement component, you can buy thousands of googly eyes for like $1. So googly eye it up.
But we are, as you can see behind me, we are the Learning Technology Center. So what sort of technology tools would we want to find in a makerspace?
Yeah, my first thing I was going to say is cardboard, lots and lots of cardboard, but cardboard isn't tech in the traditional sense, but you can do some cool things with it. So like, for example, the makey little circuit board, is it Sarah's going, yay, is awesome because you just plug it into your Chromebook, and it basically, like, you can invent ways to control your Chromebook, but paired with cardboard and with conductive materials, you can do some really cool things. Like, we were inventing our own like operation games, and we were using it, which was really funny because one of the kids decided to use my assistant principal as like their character. So we recorded a sound clip of him. So when you hit it, it would go, knock it off. And we were like, we thought that was hilarious. And then plus troll the AP, why not? So you can combine tech with traditional analog materials and do some cool things. And Makey, I thought those were only like 50 a piece,
like $50
at least back in the day. Yeah. So
yeah, you can get a good deal on a group, on a STEM group for like 10 of them. Yeah.
So that's like, because I'm really scrappy and I will get stuff from wherever I can, like that's a good PTA ask, because, you know, for a couple $100, you can get 4 of them, split your class into 4 groups, you know, so start like that and then build it up. So like get 4 one year, then get 4 more the next year, then get something else the next year. So anytime you can kind of start small and like build up. So if you can only afford 1 Sphero, well, maybe everybody can code for it, and then you take turns connecting to it and running the program until you can get enough to have, you know, I like to do 2 kids per bot if you can. That's to me like kind of the optimum, you know, or if you can get 1 3D printer, that's great, you know, or 1 Cricut machine, you know, and then kind of build those up. That's my start. Sarah, you want to build off of that?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute. No, I totally agree. I'm a huge Makey fan, and I feel like the price point is so reasonable. We had I love Ozobots. Those are always fun. I love Ozobots and Spheros and Dash robots because they have an easy tie-in to content. So we could learn for robots' sake, but we could also tie them into whatever the students were learning about and reinforce concepts that they were doing in class. So like Jen said, you don't have to have a class set of everything, or you don't have to have everything. It's okay to just find something that you like, find the funding for it, and really just learn how to use that with everybody. I will say there's a ton of STEM grant funding still. That was how we started our Makerspace. We received a grant from Lowe's. It was the Lowe's Toolbox grant. I don't think that one exists anymore, but there are lots just like it that are they're intended to support STEM education in the classroom. And I'll tell you, like, once you find kind of your like idea of what your Makerspace is going to be, you'll see that there's lots of opportunities to get funding to support it. But our PTO was super helpful and supportive too, and we definitely showed off what their investment was helping accomplish. So when we did the Makeys and we created a fun our theme was games. And so students made a really simple file folder game that was matching. And so you use the Makey to match the answer to the question. And when they did, it made a sound. And so we demoed those at a PTO meeting. We had the students had them all out. The parents walked around and, you know, would say, okay, oh, tell me what you did here. And then the kiddos would talk about it. And I don't think a parent left that wasn't just amazed, you know, pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID soon, inviting your families to experience the Makerspace and definitely increases that interest in supporting it. And a lot of families were just incredibly overwhelmed by how engaged their kids were when they came. I had a couple of kindergartners who couldn't tell their parents what my name was, but they called me Mrs. Makerspace, and I told them that was my favorite name ever, because they came in like, I don't know what you actually teach, but my kiddo talks about Mrs. Makerspace all the time. What is a Makerspace? So getting families involved, plus they have so many things at their house. I got a lot of parent donations of things like, you know, hey, I have an older kiddo, they're not into this anymore. Or, I mean, I had one family that brought me, I kid you not, one of those 18-gallon totes of Legos. And she's like,
I was
can you
just
use
gonna
these?
say Lego.
Oh my gosh, Legos are gold. You can build anything with a Lego. You can, you know, test anything with Legos. And so put it out to your families and just say, hey, here are some ideas, but honestly, we're open to anything that you have, you know. And so we got snap circuits from families. We got an R2D2 robot that was a little bit. And every little thing that we got, I just kind of displayed, and, you know, the kids would just be excited as all get out. There he is.
Matt's
I have my R2D2 Sphero still in the box.
Oh,
worth more.
But I mean, really, there's a lot of, I would say, like Jen said, Legos are gold. Those are great. And you can always get a great deal on Legos. Like the day after Thanksgiving, they always have big like sets, and you don't need anything fancy. You just need pieces, lots of pieces, because they love to create with those. every cardboard tube or sheet that you can get your hands on. My favorite was letting them kind of go in and just like forage for things. We did a project with the Spheros where they designed a miniature golf course. And so they got a green, they got like a 4x6 piece of felt, and they had to create a miniature golf course hole, and then they had to program their Sphero to get through it. So they could incorporate in three-dimensional objects if they wanted some obstacles, but they had to like predetermine their path and then code their robot to go. But they also had to like consider a theme for their hole, because when you go miniature golfing, you have to have a cool theme. And I remember there were certain ones you'd walk by and like some kids would have space, and so they'd go into we had our physical workspace, and then we had a closet that was kind of where everything got stored. And they would go in there and they'd come back out, and I'd look at their hands, and like they'd have their arms full of literally garbage. Like, what are you gonna do with that? And I'd like sit back and watch them, and their imaginations never ceased to amaze me. One time a teacher had offered counters, like they were just little counters. She had just too many. And so the kids turned those in, they were painting them, and then they were attaching them to a string, and then they were doing, and I was like, what is their theme? What is their theme? And I walk over like right before we're supposed to like show them off at a family night. And they had used those little counters as electric fence posts because their theme was Jurassic Park. And like, I was always just blown away at their ability to transform things. And again, like we never bought things specifically for a project. We just said, okay, the world is your oyster, that room. And that was definitely something that I think you mentioned earlier, teachers got a little nervous about. So like, but what if they don't pick the right things, or what if they don't? But I had that demonstrated to me very early. My very first time seeing a makerspace, we were visiting a school in Georgia. We were there for a conference, stopped by an elementary school that had a STEM focus, and their makerspace was in their library. And the person giving us a tour said, go around, just go around, talk to the kids, talk to the teachers, do whatever. So, walking around, and I walk over, and there's a little boy who has, and I did know they were working on like dioramas, like, or they had to have a representation of a region that they were learning about. So I had the idea of what their goal was in theory. And so I'm walking around, and there's a little boy, and he has a shoebox, and I kid you not, is full of Easter grass and glitter. Like, it is a hot mess. And I go, oh my gosh, buddy, what are you making? And he's like, well, this is the such and such region. They have a lot of grass, but they actually have a lot of minerals. So, and I was just like, instantly, the teacher in me was like, I know more right now about what he knows from his interpretation of what he's doing. I mean, it didn't matter that it was not the prettiest. And that's actually, it's probably more meaningful that it wasn't the prettiest diorama. His mom didn't make it, he made it. And he had intentionally chosen every single thing that he put in that box and could articulate why he picked it and what significance it had. And I was like, I'm sold, done. I'm done. I'm a believer. Holy moly. Because I was definitely that kid that was like, Mom, I need you to make it look pretty, but pretty doesn't tell anybody what what you know. That was authentic. That boy knew his region, and he had definitely put a lot of thought into why he had the components that he had in that project.
Sarah, have you seen the project where they'll take the diorama, but then they'll use video to shrink the kids down and put them in the diorama? Because then they can like talk about it. Then you may imagine that like tiny version of the kid walking around like, look at all this grass, but look at all these minerals. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
like, that's fun. So that's when
yes.
like I get super excited. I'm like, whoa.
Exactly.
Okay,
well, and yeah, we've talked about, makey. You can have buttons that people like, you make the diorama interactive, or you put a Flipgrid QR code with the kiddo talking about being, it's just, again, you're just empowering the kiddos to show you what they know. And they are so empowered that they can't wait to show it off. They're excited, they're interested. And it's so cool to see as a teacher.
Have you seen how excited it makes us too, though? Like, that's our, then we're like, yeah, like my dream was always to have, and it never happened, but like to have like this huge like classroom wide Rube Goldberg machine where like you guys make a thing with the Sphero and you make a thing with the Makey Makey. So your job is to have the Sphero roll by and activate the Makey Makey, which then activates the next person that has the little bits, and then this person that has it. Like I always thought that would be the best thing ever, but like I would need kids for way longer than I actually had them.
You've talked to us about a really good point. As far as Makerspace, it's really more of a mindset than it is a place where you go, though there can be a place where you go, but it's also how can I integrate it into what I'm doing? And it doesn't have to require an enormous investment either. You can, as you both pointed out, ask the hardware store, ask the, I used to do those little balloon rocket car things in science class. Went to the butcher shop, asked the butcher department at the local grocery store, can I get some of those trays you package the meat in? And they come out with this big sleeve that's taller than I am of hundreds of these trays, and you use those to cut out the parts for the car. So they're really light. It's amazing what you can lay your hands on if you just ask.
And that was a big selling point for the teachers, because Matt, as you mentioned, teachers are hoarders, unashamedly hoarders. But it was
Absolutely.
so funny because when we first kind of designated the space and we said, hey, we're actually going to have some space to store things. If you don't want to keep all that randomness in your room anymore, if you want to bring it down, because, I could do a project, buy some craft sticks. I do another project. I'd be like, do I have craft sticks? I don't remember, buy some more craft sticks. And so one of the first things I did when I moved out of my regular classroom and became the STEM teacher was I took everything, all of the random bits and pieces of things in my closet and started putting it in the Makerspace. And I told teachers, I'm like, this is a resource room that's, meant for the Makerspace, but it's also meant for you, right? Like if you need something, we almost kind of used it as a curriculum resource center as well. So that way teachers didn't feel like they had to, and I said, stop buying things, stop. Like, don't go buy any more things. Come to the Makerspace first and see if there's something, right? You don't need fancy counters. We have 1,000 buttons. You don't need, maybe you don't need to buy those fancy fidgets. We have some pipe cleaners that kids can play with, right? Like, we wanted to almost help the teachers develop that maker mindset as well. Like, see what we have and see maybe what you can repurpose and what you can use, and maybe come up with a new way of using something that we have. The other thing that we would constantly try to reinforce, we love this idea of kids doing projects, and project-based learning is so important. And this idea that, they learn so much from it. But before, I feel like until recent, like maybe like the last 5 or 6 years, those projects happened at home. And, it was like, do your big giant book report at home, do your diorama at home. And while, there's definitely some benefit in that home school connection, we never wanted a kid to feel like they couldn't do a project because they didn't have access to resources or they didn't have money to go buy things, because, dioramas are expensive. Components can be expensive. So we made teachers aware, like, this is a space that if you're going to ask your students to do a project, bring them down to shop at the Makerspace to pick things out. Don't expect them to buy things. We want to make sure that every kid, despite their ability to buy the things that they need, can have a project that's reflective of their learning. And so, that Makerspace became a resource for not just me as the teacher leading the activities and collaborating with the teachers, but I wanted to empower the teachers and the students too. If you have something that you need, this is a community space with resources for you to come and use.
And as you mentioned, I hope we're on the backside of this this pandemic, but we've all struggled with, expecting kids to have certain things in their home during our remote learning times. And a lot of us learned the hard way that a lot of our kids have it a lot harder than we anticipate. So having those materials and a space in which to use them can be really beneficial now that we are hopefully many of us are back to that in-person learning. We can learn a lot from Makerspaces through all the things that you're talking about. There's a lot of benefits. Jen, before we started, you were talking about something else, a different way that we can learn, not so much of through all of our successes that we can have with Makerspaces, but there are other ways to learn too. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little about that?
Yeah. For a second there, Matt, I thought you wanted me to talk about my bathroom renovation. I was like, it's not for that. No, now caught on. Okay. So one of the things, and this is where the productive struggle kind of comes in, is that you have to be okay with not having control, and you have to be okay with not being right sometimes. So there are things that, you know, let's cliche failure, first attempt in learning. So when you fail, you learn what doesn't work. So the example I was using with Matt was, I have these like I look around to see if they're here, the Bebot coding robots. Very simple. I was using them with kindergarten. So Bebots, if you don't know, they're little tiny. There's also a coding mouse. So I'm going like this because this is like the size of it, and it has like up, down, left, right buttons. So basically you like hit what you want it to do, and then you hit play, and then it goes in that direction. So pretty simple. And I was showing the kindergartners, it was an L. We were going straight, and then we were turning. Like that's what we were doing. It was amazing. We were like, how are we going to do it? So we were drawing our arrows like this, and I go, okay, let's program it in our Bebot and see. So I pressed the buttons, and then we walked over to, like, we had this big mat, and I put it down, and we hit play, and they watched it, and we had like hit one button wrong or something, and it didn't work. And they were like, so I was like, oh my gosh, this is the moment. So in my head, I'm going, this is the thing. I go, oh no, we didn't do it. I go, did I start crying? And they're like, no. And I go, did I start stomping my feet because I got really mad? Did I throw it? And they were like, no. And I go, well, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, let's go back and let's try again. And we looked at it, and we programmed it in again, and we tried it, and we put it down, and it made it. And you would have thought we won the Super Bowl. They were like, yeah, we're good. I'm like, we made an L. Yeah. But they were so excited. And to me, I was like, next time I teach it, I'm going to purposely do it wrong so that there's that moment in there, because I was like, that almost was better than having it go right the first time. Because then when we went from doing the whole class example to everybody, they were in small groups and they got to use the Bebots. I was like, then when they mess up, they know, like, oh, it's what we're doing. And then in the world of coding, you're like, oh, you're debugging. What did we do wrong? So there's like so much that got learned from the failure, like then if everything had always gone smoothly. And I think that it's important to kind of embrace and recognize that, and even like incorporate it like intentionally sometimes, like have your kids try things with the idea of like, try this out and then report back to us what didn't work, and I think that that's important.
And embracing that opportunity for like redoing and redesigning. So many times it's just wrong and we move on. And so, when we would make, one of my favorite activities that we did, that was like literally the easiest activity, we designed sleds with Legos. Well, if you think about it, Legos don't make great sleds, but that was really awesome because they would come up to the hill with their sled design, and they would do it, and they would, we always talked about parameters and like what does it mean, what are your success criteria. And instead of being upset when it didn't work, they instantly scooped it up, went back and redesigned it. And that attitude of like, it's okay that it didn't work, so what can I do differently? It came out so often and so like easily in the makerspace, because they were having fun. They forgot that they were still learning. And then that translated it. There were teachers that would say like, I can't believe he didn't melt down. He always melts down in class. And I'm like, the opportunity in the makerspace, or the attitude and the approach in the makerspace, is not about doing it right. It's about doing it and learning from it, and then maybe changing or adapting. And they definitely got that. The kiddos understood. And really, I think there were some kids who really appreciated it, because I don't think that was always the experience they were having throughout the rest of the day. And so that's a great place to build some character with the kiddos. Like, tenacity is awesome. This is an opportunity to learn and grow. That excitement about learning too, that was always big. in adult focused makerspaces, you go and you learn something new, like you learn to sew, you learn how to solder, you learn, and it's really guided on what learning is fun. Learning is fun. We're going to learn something new today. It might be hard. I might not be good at it yet. And we tried to bring those same rationales into the makerspace with the kiddos. Learning is awesome. It's so much fun. I may try something I've never done today. I may fail miserably at it, but I'm still going to walk away having learned something. And that's powerful. That's powerful life learning, because things aren't always going to be easy, but understanding that it's okay and I can continue to learn, and learning is fun, right? That's every teacher would say. Learning is fun is a critical, but sometimes we don't go out of our way to make learning fun. So I did in the makerspace, and hopefully for some teachers, I think they kind of like saw it. They're like, oh yeah, learning is fun. That is true. You're right.
I had
Go ahead.
Sorry, I had a poster hanging up in my classroom. So remember, I teach middle school, was where I was at the time. And we're a cartoon house. So one of our favorite cartoons is Adventure Time. And Jake the dog, there's this very classic line, and I would use it in my intro to my whole entire class. And I literally had it as a poster hanging up. And it was Jake the dog. And his phrase was, dude, sucking at something is the first step towards becoming sort of good at something. And we would use that all the time. So we're like, so when they would get, so remember middle school, maybe not only, but sucking at something, cool. First step towards becoming kind of good.
I love that a
lot. As we're sort of winding down here, I'm going to step back into that role of old social studies teacher. Do I need any kind of training or anything like that I have to have in order to get started with Makerspaces?
My initial reaction is no, you really don't, because it's really just more of that mindset. So it's not training, it's just a willingness to dive into the slightly uncomfortable at times.
and that's what I was going to say. I think probably my best trainings with teachers was putting them in that vulnerable position that their students were going to be in, and also them watching, like giving them a challenge. Like I would give the kids and say, okay, go. And then watching them panic because they didn't know what I meant, exactly how to produce the exact thing and like, I actually had this experience yesterday, with sixth graders. I gave them a makey and a piece of paper, and I said, make a game controller. And they're like, what? And I'm like, make a game controller. And they're like, how? And I was like, you have a Chromebook, you can look. And they're like, I don't know. And like the first one was like, well, makey game controller. Oh, I get it. And like went and grabbed some stuff and started putting it together. And instantly the other kids like look over. Teachers need that opportunity too. Like that empowerment of, you probably don't already know. Don't feel like that. Don't get that like crushing failure feeling. Get the like, oh, this is an exciting time. I get to learn something new. And I get to, experience something different and for the first time. So the training, if you're a district that's looking to, start to move towards makerspaces and utilizing makerspaces, give your teachers opportunities to play and to experience what it looks like to struggle and come out of it on the other side and to learn. I really did. I loved giving my teachers chances to be the students, and sometimes that was really uncomfortable for them. And they grew a lot in those opportunities. So
yeah, we ask our students every day to like be vulnerable and take chances and learn something new and try and do something, knowing they're not going to be successful the first time, but like we don't have that same attitude towards ourselves. And because I do a lot of stuff with video where I'll teach teachers how to do video and video editing and stuff. And I always tell them, I'm like, you're asking your kids to record themselves, but if you yourself won't get in front of the camera and are afraid of looking like an idiot, I'm like, you're asking them to do that. So just, you have to be willing to do that same thing. That same feeling that you get when I ask you to do that, that's how your students feel. And you need to understand that, mindset. So I think that's really good advice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just get in and play. Now, I would like to offer a clarification. A lot of vendors who do sell these tools that we're talking about, Makey and Bebot and things like that. There are some trainings that they offer and that are quite valuable. Please, we're not trying to say that, here's a 3D printer, take it out of the box and figure it out. That's not the way this all works. But just the idea of getting started with, just like you said, like we said before, some popsicle sticks and googly eyes, and growing that program over the course of time can be really valuable to a classroom or an entire school or district.
Well, and I think just like a school has a mission and a vision, have a mission and a vision for your makerspace. Like, help make sure the teachers understand what the purpose for it is. And our mission was to learn something. Our mission was to learn something new every day, and our vision was that it was a great day to learn something new. And so, like, when kids walked in, we really tried to keep that as our focus, because when things get tough or we don't have success, we're still learning. But my teachers recognized that it was like our motto wasn't perfection is best, or we only learn if it's right. Like, we really needed to help set that purpose for that room, and make sure that they recognize the value of the things that we were trying to accomplish in there. And so, if you're going to add a space like this, or if you're going to start to use these approaches, make sure everybody understands the rationale and, is understanding of what the goals are with the space. Have clear goals for the space, because then people will feel more confident to use them.
Great.
Sometimes teachers are like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't have the space to learn one more thing and buy another robot and have to learn that and do the PD, and I don't have the time for that and whatever. One of the, I guess, challenges I'd like to make to that belief is that you can buy a Sphero or buy a set of Ozobots or buy a Makey, not knowing anything, and you can learn it alongside the kids. You don't have to take time outside of school to learn it. You can be like, hey, I bought this new toy. Let's check this out and see what we can do. Does anyone have one of these at home? Oh, you do. What have you done with it? And again, it's just, you have to be willing to kind of be vulnerable like that. And your administrators need to be supportive of that as well. They need to understand that they come in the classroom, you're not like up there teaching the direct instruction, that you guys are like hanging out together and learning it together, and that you're opening the user guide together for the first time, and you guys are all kind of doing it. Like, that's just a different way of kind of doing the learning in the classroom. And it's not well, maybe it's better sometimes. But I was going to say it's not better or worse, but like, don't let that be the barrier to you trying something new. And if it doesn't work the first time you do it and you're like, oh, this was remember, you learned what didn't work so that the next time you can do it differently. I mean, that was my life in teaching middle school, is that we would get a grant and they'd be like, bots, like, and I'd be like, what? Okay. And is it challenging? Yeah. But I mean, I literally learned alongside the kids, but I sold it to them. I'm like, we got this new thing. I'm not sure what they do. Let's figure it out together. I'll be like, you guys get to be the first ones to use it. You're the guinea pig, and they're like, oh, exclusive. Yes, we're, you just kind of like everything in school. You're just selling it.
Use your YouTube powers for good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're like, I found this video. I'm like, sweet, let's do it.
Yeah. That's how I learned that you could play fetch with your Sphero with your dog. And that they're like, did you see that YouTube video with the dog head? And I'm like, okay, let's not do that, but good to know.
Well, on that note, I don't see any other questions in the chat or the Q&A, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Jen, Sarah, thank you both for joining us today and having this wonderful conversation. And check out what you find at ltcillinois.org/events for webinars, online courses, and of course, all of our in-person events as well. For those who are attending live today, within 24 to 48 hours, you should receive an email with a link to get your evaluation form, and so that you can earn PD credit. and this recording will be posted on YouTube during the same time frame. So thank you all very much for joining us today on this beautiful day, and hope to see you back here again soon.